from the retreat, scraped against gravel as they were escorted toward the newly established American camp. A temporary enclosure built on a former pasture, surrounded by barbed wire still smelling of fresh metal. Hunger and exhaustion locked their faces in the same expression. Weary, hollow-eyed vigilance, mixed with the disbelief of still being alive. And though the camp wasn't large compared to the sprawling U.S. facilities farther inland, it carried the unmistakable discipline of the American Quartermaster Corps. Rows of tents, standing neatly in lines, medical stations marked with red crosses fluttering in the breeze, trucks rumbling in and out, unloading crates stamped with U.S. Army codes, and somewhere near the center, smoke drifted upward in a slow, steady column, the unmistakable curl of a cooked fire, and the new arrivals smelled it before they could see its source. A warm, fatty scent, heavy with pepper and something sweet, tightening stomachs that had lived on thin rations for months, some prisoners swallowing hard without meaning to, and among them were 4 young men captured together outside mines just days earlier. The eldest, a weary 22-year-old former architecture student, walking with the stiff determination of someone desperate to remain dignified despite everything crumbling around him. Beside him, an experienced 20-year-old infantryman whose coat still carried the smoke of ruined villages. The youngest 16, who had spent more time in the Hitlerjugend than in the army, watching everything with a blend of fear and fascination. And the fourth, an 18-year-old radio operator, limping slightly, his calf bandaged from a shrapnel graze. Their ages varied, but their condition was the same. Caught between the propaganda they had been raised on and the undeniable truth of their defeat. Rumors among surrendering units, telling of Americans feeding prisoners surprisingly well, yet contradictory claims warned of poisoned rations and filth, whispers repeated under breath, as if reciting them might protect the youngest from disappointment. The others silent, trust feeling like a dangerous luxury. And as they passed through the gate, an American corporal waved them forward with brisk efficiency, dividing them into groups for registration and medical inspection. The line moving quickly as doctors checked for lice, infections, frostbite, clerks noting hometowns, ranks, birth years, and beyond the processing tables, the smoke thickened, the scent deepened. Curiosity tugging at every hungry stomach. At the center of the camp, a large fuel-fed grill of the portable steel models issued to American mess units near the front. Behind it, a broad-shouldered mess sergeant in a grease-speckled apron, his Iowa accent cutting through the air as he instructed younger cooks. Flipping meat with the instinct of a man who had spent years cooking for farmhands before soldiers, fat sizzling as it dripped onto the hot metal, sending bursts of dyes, smoke spiraling upward in sudden waves. The prisoners stiffening the moment they recognized the smell. "Pork," muttered the infantrymen with scowl, the 16-year-old sneering in disgust. The propaganda they'd grown up with painting American pork as contaminated, indecent, unclean. Even before the war, rural German communities treating pork with reverence, the scent of frying meat feeling like an insult, masked as hospitality, yet hunger spoke louder. And the mess sergeant noticed the conflicted glances. Pride first, hesitation second, the inevitable surrender to hunger. No mockery, just cooking. And by mid-morning, the prisoners had been moved into assigned fenced areas, blankets, canteens, and camp routines distributed. The 4 young men standing near the fence closest to the grill, the aroma floating richer now, more insistent, the 16-year-old wrinkling his nose dramatically, the 22-year-old exhaling slowly, pretending he felt nothing. The radio operator glancing, with unconcealed curiosity. American guards chatting about pork shipments, the gust of aroma washing over the fence like a physical wave. Intoxicating. The 18-year-old cracking slightly, closing his eyes, letting it hit him without resistance. The sergeant flipping chops with deliberate sound. The youngest prisoner's stomach growling aloud, mortified, pride giving way to survival, and as the whistle cut through the camp, signaling the midday meal. They hesitated, caught between pride and survival, stepping forward slowly as the line moved with reluctant rhythm, the morning sun lifting traces of night cold, their stomachs tightening with each inhalation of aromatic smoke. The infantryman muttering to the radio operator, observing with disbelief, the 16-year-old staring everywhere except the food. The sergeant working with smooth, almost theatrical coordination, metal utensils clanging, trays slapping, sizzle punctuating the air like applause, inspecting color, char, texture. The prisoners witnessing calm generosity after months of chaotic rations. Skepticism warred with hunger. As the 20-year-old leaned forward, the 16-year-old flinching at each wave of scent. The sergeant placing chops on their trays with precise, even motion. The 22-year-old testing the edge, astonished at its warmth and weight. Hesitation fading, hunger winning over propaganda, bites taken slowly, expressions flickering between disbelief and relief, quiet reverence marking each mouthful, no words needed as the unspoken acknowledgement settled between them. The first real taste of truth reshaping conviction. The mess sergeant watching, familiar with the humbling transformation, youth and pride lending deeper weight. The meal ending gradually, silence threading between empty trays. Subtle shifts recognized. The next morning rising warmer, sunlight creeping over canvas rooftops. Carl stretching stiff limbs, Hans rubbing eyes, Lucas studying Americans with curiosity, Fritz tense, all recalling yesterday's meal with quiet weight. Breakfast bell ringing. Line forming again. The grill crackling. A second added. Sergeant sprinkling pepper, flipping dozen chops fluidly, vinegar hissing on iron. Hunger now triggered by smell, not disgust. Pride, softening. Routine efficiency, calming the scene. The prisoners reaching the front, chops placed on trays with deliberate precision, each tasting the difference, tension easing into acceptance, unspoken understanding threading between them, truth settling over propaganda, the grill behind them hissing, new arrivals escorted in, wounded and dazed, medics rushing forward, water handed freely, equal treatment extended. Carl noticing it all. Hans torn between anger and reluctant respect. Lucas silently shocked. Fritz momentarily lost. Meal call continuing with structured calm. 4 prisoners stepping forward, tray in hand, pork chop glistening. Bites taken with reverence, shoulders loosening, expressions softening, quiet contemplation filling the air. The camp settling into gentle murmur. Boundaries unchanged, war unended, yet intangible hostility softened. Carl, seeing Americans not as enemies, but as men who laughed, cooked, and carried the wounded without question. A notice pinned near the fence, reading of equal rations and care per Geneva Convention, dated that morning. The simplicity pressing heavily against old beliefs, the camp subtly different, still confined, still foreign, yet no longer entirely hostile. The warmth of the meal settling into bones, the grill crackling, the scent drifting, the lies long fed, now fractured. And, as the sun dipped lower, a jeep approaching with an officer and sealed envelope, the unmistakable signal of change rippling through the camp, for sometimes the most profound shifts begin not with battle, but with the quiet approach of news, that will test everything newly learned. And in that moment, before words reshaped fate, the four young men felt the air tighten, knowing everything they had believed could change in an instant. And as they watched the envelope exchanged, the world beyond the barbed wire felt simultaneously frightening and alive, a fragile bridge between fear and understanding, stretching taut before them. That was the moment their captivity shifted, quietly, irrevocably, forever.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.